You're listening to the Becoming Zesty Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex, and we're so happy that you're here.
We are passionate about accelerated transformation, yours, ours, and the collective.
Personal and professional for coaches, practitioners, and leaders of all kinds.
Between the two of us, we seem to have done things the painful way. So let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We are not afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul.
Combining over 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to create the life of your dreams, supporting yourself through all four bodies, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, every step of the way.
We are transformation accelerators, wholeness cultivators, empowerment experts, speakers, authors, mentors, and change makers for a more loving world. By combining Dr. Alex's MD experiences
with Megan's mindset magic, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people transform their lives, and we can help you too. If you're ready to accelerate your transformation and have so much fun doing it, then stick around. We've got you covered. Quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to the Becoming Zesty Podcast. I have an amazing guest here with me, Carly. Hi, Carly.
Hi.
Carly is an FDN practitioner like myself. We're quite the mirror for each other, and an NLP master practitioner. And we wanted to feature Carly here today because she has been such an amazing example of what rapid transformation looks like. This is someone who came into an event, one of our 7-day event as a teacher, and left to announce not too long after that she was going to completely change her career. So what we do in our world is success leaves clues. So we can ask people, what were they thinking? What were they feeling? What were they doing? How did they make transformation that fast? So I want you to be listening along to Carly's story and to those turning points so that you can apply this to your life. And if everyone could grab one takeaway from today's episode, tag us on social media. We'll have Carly's Instagram, and ours is at Becoming Zesty now. Send us a screenshot of your biggest takeaway, or share a video, or email us, support@zestyginger.com. However you'd like to get us that information. We know if there's just one thing that you got from today, then you could change your life. You can have something different. So let's do this. So Carly, welcome. We're so happy you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
So, okay, tell me a little bit about, so you came into, when we met you, you were a teacher. Tell us how you got into teaching, and then how did you know you wanted to change that career for a while, or what was going on there?
Okay, so how I got into teaching is I always loved kids. Like, I was a babysitter, I was a mother's helper, I was a camp counselor. And I went to college actually I was an English major, and then I transitioned into being a fine arts major. And I went to college just to join a sorority and have fun. I didn't go to college to learn. But somewhere along the lines, I realized I can learn about whatever I want to learn about. And so I switched to being a fine arts major. I love doing art. And actually, after I graduated college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had also taken a lot of psychology courses and social, like, I forget, courses on like social development and things like that. So that all really interested me. And I did take 1 or 2 classes in education, but my mom was a teacher and all of her friends were teachers. And I didn't want to become a teacher because other people were teachers. And I wanted to do something very different. And so I ended up finding a job at Bloomingdale's, just working retail. And I was pretty good at sales, and they were moving me up pretty fast with that. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll be a buyer. Like, a buyer is a pretty cool job. And somewhere along the lines, I just realized that it just was not in alignment with me I was like seeing behind the scenes what we were upselling, how certain merchandise was being made at different factories and then shipped to different stores at different price points. And it just was not aligning with me. trying to force people to buy things that they didn't actually want or need. And I don't know, something in me was like, well, teaching is something that people actually need, and they need more educators that are in it because they have the child in mind and the whole child. And so I did go back to school and I went to get my master's degree, and I was really passionate about childhood development. And that was the parts that I was really fascinated by, like how children develop and the developmental stages and appropriate education and hands-on experiences. And so then I became really determined to be that teacher who provides those kids those experiences. And yeah, so I went into teaching. I was extremely passionate, very eager, very green, wanted to prove myself, and I did prove myself. And quickly realized actually when I was student teaching that it was the gifted students that I found. Well, okay, so it was like both ends of the spectrum, but the gifted students were the ones that I was really enjoying working with, because they were the ones that like you can kind of run with their own ideas. They come up with the ideas and then you sort of help to foster them, and then it's like a whole project thing. So I ended up getting certified to teach gifted students, and then I transitioned into becoming the teacher of gifted students. And that led me to like I was in teaching for 12 years, and just at some point it was like all the things that I was enjoying about teaching were slowly starting to kind of get stripped away from me. And yeah, other things too with my personal life, where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So you had an inkling coming into training like this, I'm ready for a shift. And it sounds like from knowing you, Carly, it's like you're still a teacher. It's just not of small children.
Yeah, of inner children.
Yes, a teacher of the inner children. So what was it that had allowed you to make that flip in your mind that you're like, now it's actually time to change my career? Because there's a lot of people who will reach out to us and be like, oh, and I know for me, I was in engineering and I like wanted to leave and I waited till I actually got the boot. Right. And other people will make the jump. And that's what we're really hoping for people, is that they make the jump when they're ready, not versus waiting for, things to crumble. But what was it for you that allowed you to be like, I can make this jump now?
There was a few things. So one of the things was that I switched schools, and I had gotten to the school that I've been wanting to work at all along, and really enjoyed it there. Like I really resonated with the community, the kids. It was just exactly the school that I wanted to be at. I had to put the teaching gifted students aside, but then I was also like able to interview and get a position for gifted for the following year. So I was at that school for a year and then interviewed for the gifted position for the following year. But there was like a track playing in my mind of the switching the schools, this is great, but just the projecting of this as being my life for the next 28 years, just I was pushing that voice down, and it kept coming back up. And I was really like masking it and kind of fighting and trying so hard to be the teacher that I was when I was in the top of my career and super passionate. And it was still getting the results, but I was coming home exhausted and depleted and lacking any type of motivation to really create the experiences for the kids that I used to love creating, the parts of it that I love doing. And then one of the so I was already kind of in the back of my mind that stuff was happening. Me and my friend were really into functional health, and I was doing stuff now with functional health as a client. And so me and my friend kept talking about it, and we're like, it'd be fun to go into functional health. Like it'd be fun to do stuff like that, but like not really believing it. Like I was like, oh, this could be a hobby. And then I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and I just saw this future of uncertainty. And I happened to be in a flare up at the time, and not being able to just like go to the bathroom when I want to go to need to go to the bathroom, and being able to take off from work when I need to take off from work. And I just had this feeling of taking care of myself is my priority right now. And I can't do that while I'm taking care of 60 other little people who really need me more than I need myself. And then I was like, wait, no, I need myself more, because somebody else, there's always going to be somebody else. There's always going to be I can't put that on myself, that if I leave, nobody else who wants it or is in the better mindset at that point in time will step in. So that was part of the process. And then other things like the gifted position that I had then gone after and was going to have got kind of, I lost the funding literally days before school started the following school year. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I really wanted that anyway. I don't think I want to teach anyway. And it was really the first time I was admitting those thoughts to myself and realizing that this is actually probably an opportunity. And instead of forcing and fighting for the thing that I don't even know if I want, because like what comes after that, there's got to be a different way. I remember sitting at the back to school staff meeting, and I loved the people that I worked with. But one of the things was that had kind of been planted in my mind was to look around and find the people that you aspire to be and align yourself with them. And I was looking around, and it wasn't that I didn't want any of the positions. I didn't want to be the principal of the school. I didn't like, there was no more up for me to go. And I like to go up. So I like to level up, and I just wanted, so that was really one of the biggest culminating moments.
Oh, that's so good. So you're looking around and I heard two things. You're future pacing, like in 20 years, if I continue on this, and then looking around being like, I don't even want any of these positions. So where would I be going here?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good. So once you made that decision, was that an easy switch?
Okay. So not until I actually made the decision. So I didn't really make the decision until I was at your level 1 certification training. Until then, I was sort of playing house, in my mind. I signed up for the certifications sometime in August or July, maybe, of last year of 2022. And even then I was like, well, this would be a fun hobby, and I can use the FDN stuff on myself and my friends. And then I can use like the NLP languaging and stuff with myself again and with my students. And then there was a part of me that was like, well, what if this could be a career? And then I started with a 2-year goal, and then it became a 1-year goal. And then I was at the training, and I was like, well, what if this is like a in 2 weeks goal?
And she gave her 2-week notice.
Yeah. It's funny because at the training, I was like, I'm going to give 4 weeks. I was like, I'll give them till November, which is Thanksgiving break, because I was really like, that's what felt fair for them. And it was the day we came back from the training. It was Saturday, Sunday, and I was in bed Sunday night. And I was like, no, this is a 2-week decision. I cannot do this anymore. It's like, once you realize what you're up against and you realize you can just stop fighting against it, it becomes so much harder to fight against it. And then I just realized, like, I don't need to fight this anymore. This isn't my battle to fight.
So you realized you had a choice.
Yes.
And then at that point, you're like, oh, wait, I'm making this choice every day.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, this is a choice where I get to put myself first.
And was that new for you, Carly?
Yes. You do it for the kids. You're teaching for the kids. It's all about the kids. And who was I to be the person who says, I don't have it in me to be fighting for the kids anymore, is what it really felt like I was saying.
Right. Because then I'd be putting myself first.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in that process, so you became an FDN. So what led you to that? So I know the Hashimoto's seems like a big part of the story. If you want to share a little bit about how that led into you deciding to actually become an FDN versus just hiring one.
Oh, so I did hire one before I knew I had Hashimoto's. So I was in like an online workout group. So I was in a circle with the person who hosted the online group, who's Kylene, is an FDN. And so I was sort of exposed to that world just through her own marketing that I happened to catch online and things like that. But that was like for 6 years. Like I knew her for 6 years. And I was just like, I was curious about doing the GI map for a while, which is the stool test, where you find out like the bacteria and stuff that's in your poop. That intrigued me for a while, like years. That was intriguing me. I remember reaching out to her, I think like 4 years ago about that. But at some point, once I switched from one school to the other, and I still kind of hadn't reclaimed this inner motivation and drive. And I had gotten to a place where I was feeling really flat, and I was on antidepressants, and I was still feeling flat. And so I talked to my doctor, and he's like, well, that could be a pretty strong. And I had this intuitive hit, like, if I'm feeling flat when I'm on this medication, it's probably not serving a purpose anymore. And that was really empowering, because when I called my doctor about it, he's like, well, that sounds like you're probably ready to come off of them. So That definitely was a big moment. It was realizing what I was suspecting was backed by him. And so I did come off of those, and it was still about 5 or 6 months now. I was at the new school. I was like fostering kittens, and I was enjoying working. And I'd come home and I couldn't get myself to really do much of anything. And it was really this missing link of the motivation and the creativity, because that's just sort of been a huge part of my identity going all the way back to childhood. Like I was the one who was so imaginative, and I was so playful and creative, and I was a fine arts major and an English major, and those are all things that are creative. And I just like lost my sparkle is how I could explain it. It just it didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like it was there anymore. And I knew something had to change. And the exact timing of when I felt like something needed to change, Kylene and her friend Sophie, who's also FDN and NLP trained, were hosting this free week-long program. And I was like, well, it's free and it aligns with some of the things I've been saying I was curious about. And I did that. And so that's how I ended up getting into FDN. That the whole week was just, it was funny because I didn't really fully participate in it because it didn't line up very well with my schedule. I worked at a school that got out really late. So I think I went to like 3 of the 5 calls, but there was something about what the link that they were helping me to understand between how my physical health and my mental health are part of the same system that really clicked with me and really resonated. I was like, oh, I've done all these things for my mental health, which was like the medications and the check-ins with the doctors and things like that. And nothing was changing. And if anything, things were starting to kind of get worse, because now I was getting really tired and I was having joint pain and I was having headaches, and there was like spotting in between cycles and all this stuff. And so that really that link between my mental health and physical health, and now having, again, this like possibility that there is something else that I can try that I haven't thought about trying, is really what got me in the door.
Okay, so you started with mental health essentially. So that's, you know, I feel like everybody kind of gets, like, for me, it's like I started physical, and so then you started mental health, and then you were like, oh wow, like what's going on in my gut could also be impacting what's going on in my brain and what these thoughts are. Okay.
It's interesting though with mental health, because it's like you get these diagnoses and then it comes the medications that go along with it. And I never really thought to explore different, like I didn't really understand that there's different modalities of getting to the mental health stuff. And so it's like, oh, okay, you have depression, you take an antidepressant. You have anxiety, you take an anti-anxiety. You have ADHD, you take Adderall. Like, and that was sort of, and then you check in with the doctor to make sure, like, to keep the side effects in check. But it never was really getting to the layers underneath, nor did I realize that I needed to be getting to the layers underneath, which in retrospect just seems weird.
Okay, so at this point, there's mental health kind of from like the conventional view of what's wrong, and then let's fix the imbalance. So at this point, then it's not, you didn't quite have an awareness of like underlying beliefs or traumas or energy or emotions impacting you, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, and it sounds like I've heard you say that you love FDN and you love the testing and you love the physical, but you really do feel like combining that with other tools as what impacted you the most. So can you share a little bit about your opinion on that as you've worked through both?
Yes, for sure. I started with the functional labs because that was just something I hadn't explored yet. Had no clue that the mental and emotional stuff was also like something that could be supported by my FDNs. I mean, it was a group program. So they were teaching somatics, they were teaching some parasympathetic tools and calming the body. But the main, like at the beginning, it was really seeing that like my estrogen was like ridiculously low and my cortisol was low. And those two things alone, it was the first time that I saw it in black and white. Like, this isn't you. There's something going on. There's an imbalance. And I mean, when a seesaw is going in one direction, there's that hope and possibility, like, well, okay, well, now I just need to sway it back in the other direction. So those labs was like just so validating.
Okay. So then it was that moment of, this finally lines up with how I feel.
Yeah. And then I like felt seen and heard, and validated because here is somebody on the other side, like, well, this is why you feel this way, and this explains this, and this explains that.
Okay. And then, so what led you to want to go deeper and more than FDN?
I'll have to admit there was a lot of resistance with going deeper at first. So the labs and all of the group stuff started in January of 2022, right? Or 2021. About a year and a half ago. I'll go with that. And we were learning techniques to like calm down our body. We were learning techniques to talk to parts of our body. And so it was kind of like one of those, well, let me talk to my estrogen. Like, why are you so low, estrogen? Like, what's going on? And how did I not know about this before? And for what purpose was I like not thinking to explore like my, the signs and symptoms that would have led me to the place to realize that something's off with my hormones. And it was in that moment that I recovered like repressed trauma. And with that came like what I now know is like a gestalt. So like a grouping of other memories that I either had repressed at a time and recovered later on, or other things that like I was like, oh yeah, when like my psychiatrist pointed this out to me, we never actually explored it. And so there was a lot of like, who am I? What's happening? Why did I not know this about myself? Thoughts. And I kind of stewed in that for a while, like, okay, well, that explains that, and like moving on. But it was not moving on because now, and that then cascaded. And at the time, I didn't really understand. So I didn't actually share that with anybody, which was another thing. Like I understood I got such a deep piece of information about myself and like big T trauma that I had experienced in my childhood. And parts of me were just like, no, that's not, like, you're distorting that. That's not your experience. But enough of me knew it that it started to really spiral really fast because all of a sudden, all the things that I'd been doing with the functional health, I was seeing like rapid change and rapid growth, and my mindset was clearing up, and I was just like becoming this person that was really strong and liked to work out and was doing projects around the house. And so I sort of knew the thing that I knew that I now needed to tell somebody or work on. And I was like, well, if I just push that back down in there, then I can continue being the person who I was becoming of all the things. And that worked in a sense for a month or two until all of a sudden the anxiety really caught up with me. And it really started to translate into like so many food intolerances. And then it was just like at some point I just could not do it by myself any longer. And that is funny because we were doing like a breathwork session and I was just like, nope, not gonna like, gotta get more labs. Like, what's causing the food intolerances? Like, I still hadn't really connected the dots that the food intolerances was not because all of a sudden something functionally was not caught that could have been caught before, but it was because all of the anxiety and work that I was doing to shove down the stuff that I now knew and pretend like it didn't actually exist was like now starting to like really take over.
So your body was just screaming out for you to acknowledge what you had just.
Oh yeah. And the people that were making me feel safe and comfortable were the ones that it was screaming out like the loudest when they'd be around me, which I now know is because it was telling me to tell them. But at the time I was just like, I didn't want to.
So the food intolerances and the physical things would flare more as soon as you were around them.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. And it seems like the opposite of what you wanted, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So as that's happening, I'm curious, can you share for anybody listening who's been in that situation or maybe is currently in that situation where they're in the like push it back down phase? What are some resources? I know, yeah. What are your biggest pieces of advice there of like lean in or resources to help someone actually shift from that, the push down point to the reach for help?
I was so fortunate to be aligned with the people that I was aligned with at the time that all of this was happening. One of the breaking points for me was I was feeling better, and at the same time, like, well, maybe there's more information we can get. So we ran some blood labs in around the end of March and beginning of April. And that's when the Hashimoto's diagnosis came about. And for me in that moment, and I kind of recognized from higher perspective, like this should have been a moment, could have, would have been a moment of clarity of like, oh, look, I'm looking for like black and white answers. And here is a black and white answer. But it just did something to me that, again, like looking back on it, it was like a flare up of, I had been diagnosed with CPTSD when I was in my early 20s. And that was another one, like, let's push that under the rug. Like, la di da. I never dealt with it. And so that all of a sudden like came back like raging. And I didn't quite understand why. And I just remember like feeling so many emotions and feeling like betrayed, but I didn't understand why I was feeling betrayed. And it just, that was the culminating moment. So I think your original question was, what were the tools and resources? So one of the biggest things definitely was the functional lab work and then changing lifestyles. So I went gluten-free, I was being more active, and that definitely allowed my body to start feeling safe enough and strong enough. And, I had people around that were safe people now. And I really, really strongly believe that was what allowed the neurons in my brain to kind of say, hey, we're safe now. Here's that thing that is the next layer that's pretty deep that needs to be worked on in order to get the balance that you're looking for and move up to the next levels. After that, it's the communication. It's you cannot do it alone. It's letting somebody else into your inner world of, this is what happened, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it. And just even the littlest crack in that is enough to get the ball rolling. Like, hey, I recognize this thing about myself like several months ago, and I've been trying to figure it out on my own, and I'm really struggling.
So building that community. So are the people that you built in your community, Carly, are they local or are they internet buddies?
They are internet buddies for the most part. I did recently start making some friends that are more local. And I love my friends who are local. But at that point in time, I was like not even willing to show myself who I was. And I was hiding a lot of myself from the world. So it was my internet buddies that really came, and actually joining HTA was your group program was extremely, extremely helpful, because now I was in a group with other people who were, it's so isolating. I don't know how to explain it. It's so isolating, even before I understood the trauma that I was up against, even before I had the Hashimoto's diagnosis. Literally, when I was just the person who was making the lifestyle changes or the food changes and I was working with the towards motivators of stepping into the identity of the healthy person, stepping into the identity of the towards motivator person, was isolating, because all of the people around me, at least in my view of the world at that time, didn't get it and weren't making those changes and weren't doing inner work. And it was just so isolating. So once I joined the group program where there were people who were doing the inner work, that was also like a huge shift.
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight that because I hear this a lot, and I know I had the same pushback of like, yeah, but what if you don't have any local people who are into this? Because it gets very specific when you're like, okay, I want to be holistic. I want to have functional medicine. Because as you can hear, in general, our goal is to use all the resources. We're not like, oh no, it's not functional medicine anymore. It's the mindset. Oh no, it's not the mindset. We're like, let's use all of them. But as you layer them, I know I've found, so now you're getting more and more specific. You're like, I need someone who's into the functional medicine and open to talking about emotions and okay, like holding space for my trauma. And right, it becomes a lot of, and so what we've found is that to find that type of person who's like wanting rapid transformation, who's willing to do this stuff that gets very, I mean, it just is, it's a lot. That's where we find these people all over the US, all over the world. So that's where like these groups, the internet becomes and then the group where you form these bonds. And then luckily for us, we do get to meet up in person because we do our, I just saw Carly last week at our 2-day training, right? We actually have live events now. So you can then bring all those people together. Yes, you flew in from different places, but they're now in one place. So I just share that because I know anybody who's thinking like, yes, but I don't have people like this around. That's okay. Because maybe you see them once a year in person or twice, but you can have this amazing relationship over Zoom. I mean, Alex and I knew each other for a year before we actually met in person. So, and okay, Carly, another thing is that you said, so the 12-week group, which depending on when this airs should either be open to join now or very, very soon. So that's now called, it used to be HTA, and it's now called our Transformation Accelerator program. And I know that you're very good at using resources and finding resources. Was there anything specific that stood out from that program that helped you through this transition time?
You guys were teaching, I think it was even in the first week, your emotional processing technique, which was DIMES. And it was just the step-by-steps of this is what you do when you're feeling emotional or when you're butting up against the boundaries or the decisions. And it was one of those, like, I taught kids about their emotions and I never really realized like I didn't know what to do with my own emotions. And this like aha moment of I don't even really know how to label my emotions was very startling to me. And so having this concrete, basically directions of what to do when I'm butting up against that uncomfortable feeling or situation was really, really changing. I was grasping at straws at that point in time. Like it was taking so much of my energy to exist almost. And I was putting up such a huge mask even to myself where I didn't even realize I was in the place that I was in. And then it was kind of like the layers of that started peeling back. And so it was with the emotional processing tool where I was kind of starting to put the pieces together that I'm in a bigger hole than I realized that I'm in. And there's a way to get out of it.
Beautiful. You just said the mask. I want to talk about the masks because this reminds me of a topic near and dear to you and my heart. So one of the things that our bodies will do to protect us is dissociate. So we essentially kind of step out of our body. It's like we're seeing ourselves in the picture on the screen. We're zoomed out. We're not really grounded. We're not really in it. So it's the opposite of when, we teach our trainings when we get in peripheral, when we're actually like really grounded in our body and we're seeing through our own eyes. And so this is something that a lot of people have learned as a trauma response, and it's automatic. It's not like we're doing it on purpose. It's just this thing that happens. But can you tell me a little bit about how that's played out for you as a place that your body likes to go?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to think back on it because the concept of dissociation, like with that actual word, is something that I honestly don't think I labeled or like connected to that's what I'm doing until a few months ago. But I remember in college, for the first time that I can remember in college was I remember talking to one of my friends, and it's like one of those like where you know the things and you don't know that you know the things, and so it just stands out that you're like having this aha moment. So it's like probably a nothing conversation that it stuck with me so much was I remember saying to her, like, it just feels like I'm not here. Like I'm doing the things, I'm talking to people. Nobody else from the inside or outside would know that something is off, but I don't feel like I'm here. And it was that conversation that actually did end up leading me because her sister at the time was experiencing something similar. And so I believe it was that conversation that led to me booking an appointment with a psychiatrist and eventually getting like a few different diagnoses. That also, the timing of that conversation was before I had the CPTSD diagnosis, but within months of when a whole bunch of events happened concurrently that led to the diagnosis. So I didn't realize what was happening at the time. And at the time, there was a memory that was repressed in addition to the big T trauma that I did have. But there was enough memories that weren't repressed that led to like this, like just fleeing myself, almost like, and it's almost like abandoning yourself, or like parts of you are trying to protect you because you don't have the tools and resources, or it doesn't think that you have the tools and resources to be able to handle it for yourself. So that was the first time that I just felt off. Like, and it's like I was there and I was doing the things and I wasn't doing the things. And then I kind of forgot that was happening. And when I joined the program with Kylie and Sophie, it was again like I recovered this big T trauma that happened like even before all those other events. And I remember at some point saying to one of them something along the lines of, "It's so weird because I'm on the calls with you, I'm participating, I'm answering, and then we hang up the call and I don't remember anything that happened on it." And so that started happening more and more, and that started to like kind of really freak me out a little bit. But again, I still didn't really understand what was happening. I didn't know that was dissociation.
Yeah. So, what have you learned from that, or what tools have you used now when you find that that's happening?
So one of the things was sort of backtracking on what's the thing that happens right before that. Well, what happens right before that? Well, what happens right before that? And it was something that Dr. Alex had said to me at the level 2 training that really resonated, which was when we were labeling emotions, and I was noticing that I was still kind of struggling with, like, we're now going a level deeper, and what's an activating emotion and what's a deactivating emotion. I was still struggling with that at that point. And I remember saying something to her about like, well, anxiety is not on this list of emotions. What's anxiety? And she's like, well, in my model of the world, like anxiety is more of a state of being rather than an emotion. And I don't remember if there was more to that conversation or not. More than likely there was, and bits and pieces of it is what made it into my subconscious for me to have the realization that if I was experiencing so many levels of anxiety, that anxiety was part of the mask, right? So now there's this layer of whether it's depression or it's anxiety, it's the state that's getting in between me and the outer world so that I cannot feel or figure out or be exposed to whatever that anxiety is keeping me away from.
Oh, that's so good.
Thanks.
It's such a good way to put it. I feel like people can feel that difference. So I know you do a lot of practice now to like really get grounded in your body. Yeah.
Yes.
And has that made a difference?
Yeah, it's like I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing to listen to this. I want to be here. That's been really helpful. And yes, yes.
And sometimes even just labeling like, oh, I'm doing that dissociating thing will bring you back. Because I know when we get to work together, like when I jokingly told you had to dissociate, your body's like, no, I don't. Right?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, it's definitely once I allowed myself to label it. I was actually reading a book, which is a trigger warning. So if you're going through something, it's almost like I was reading it on purpose. I think that's like a whole nother thing. But it's The Body Keeps the Score, which
I knew you were going to say that one. It is super triggering.
It's super triggering for me where I was. I trusted in where I was in the journey that there was a purpose for me reading it. There was a purpose for me getting triggered. And it was like months after I think I had labeled the fact that I dissociated, because I remember telling you after the January event, like I was like, I talked to a whole crowd of people and I know I was talking and I know I was getting feedback about it, but I have no clue what I was saying. I have no clue what the people around me were saying. And I don't know if I think the word dissociation came up at that point, but at that point, I guess only parts of me were on board with it, because when I was reading that book, it was just like, oh, I dissociate. And that was like really a culminating moment of like, this is something I do. I don't need to pretend that I'm not doing it. There was some shame still around the fact that I do dissociate, but I could no longer it was so black and white reading that book that this is something I have and this is something I do. And then that allowed me to kind of research a little bit more about it.
And the amazing thing is it's not, you would say you gave a whole talk or you talked to a bunch of people and it was very clear. So I just want to let other people know it's not necessarily like this person is like slurring their words or not. I mean, she's very, very clear in this state. Just you weren't present in the same
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
So I think the moment that I actually was like, oh, I really need to tell somebody that this is happening, because it did start getting worse. And what I'm learning is when the parts of you are starting to get worse, which is not worse, it's louder. So when the parts of you are starting to get louder, it's because like you're stepping into this identity shift and you're kind of resisting allowing the shift to happen, and getting yourself the tools and resources that can support that part of you that is now like, hey, I'm here. Why are you pretending I'm not here? Why are you like hating me? And why are you telling me to go away? And so one of the like last piece that I needed of it getting loud was almost it getting quiet, because I remember being on a group call and it was just me, you, one other coach who I was friends with, I'd met at the level 2 training. I think Michelle, your head coach, like was on the call, and it was like a relaxed, fun call. And I remember at some point, like I felt calm, I felt relaxed, I was just being me. And I remember when I came to on the call being like, oh, that was weird. So like I had this awareness that like I kind of just like disappeared, but I didn't disappear because it wasn't scary. And the part that was scary was recognizing that this is now happening in a more quiet way than it had been happening before. And I was like, oh, now I need to tell somebody, because it's like I didn't remember what was happening and it wasn't a trigger. Like there was nothing triggering that was happening. It was just kind of like, I think it was just like, hey, I can do this to you, whether you like, no matter what the situation is now. So I'm going to.
In a way, it's that part wanted to have a little control, right? The part's like, I'll do it now or I won't, right? You don't even have to have a trigger. I think the parts of us that are competing, the parts of us that are there to protect us, understanding those parts, I know for you, Carly, and for me personally, have just made huge world of difference, because then you can see like, oh, that part's kind of flaring up as we head into this situation where I'm doing something a little bigger than before, or it might be there's this potential for putting myself out there, and I know I will start to experience this flare up of a part coming in, and it's actually a part of us, a different part of us coming to protect. What I know, as you've started to really understand parts, what's been the most impactful for you to just kind of understand that there are these different parts that pop up?
It's kind of funny because it was on a call, I think literally our last call that we had together, which so probably about a month ago at the most. And you just said at one point towards the end of the call, it's just a part of you. Like, I don't remember, I haven't watched the call. I don't remember exactly what, and we were in my subconscious. So like, I don't really remember what was happening or what I was saying, but I definitely remember you saying, and because it just stuck with me, like, and it's just the part of you. And so it's just having like the outsider support of like validating, like, or reassuring, like, this is just a part of you. And that goes all the way back to level 1 of when I was resisting so hard letting you into my world. And you saying like, this is just something your brain is doing right now. Like, this is just something your brain is doing right now. And just like, it's that level of safety and comfort, and somebody recognizes that I am not all of this. This is just a part of who I am, or a part of what I'm struggling with right now. That was just like, okay, well, this is safe for me to explore.
I love that you brought that up. I'd love to talk about that resistance you came into level 1. And I want to highlight this just because I said in the very beginning, what I wanted you all to listen for is like the speed at which Carly made changes and transformation. I do also want to point out though, like the resistance, the level of resistance was like high, very high, like super high resistance, and also still then made choices and has gone at a very fast speed. So I'm just stating that out loud. If you're a person who's like, I'm super resistant and I've been resisting all the things, that doesn't actually mean that it's going to take a long time. It's like almost the level of resistance, things bubbled up and escalated faster. And then you got to your tipping point or your C. I'm not sure. You get to your
I
tipping
didn't
point
even
of,
know I was resisting. Like that was something that came up months later when I was like, oh, I'm resisting. Like,
okay, even better, right? You're a part of you is like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm
yeah.
going to do this thing. And you're not even going to know. So when you came into the training, I love this story so much where you were like, I don't do the anger thing and really having a hard time getting into certain emotions. And for those of you who have come to our level 1 training, we clear the big 6: anger, sadness, hurt, fear, guilt, shame. It doesn't mean you'll never feel the feelings again. What we're doing is we're clearing out the inappropriate or unwarranted times where we're really tied to those emotions, because that way we're not pulling them up over and over again when something happens in the now, right? If somebody cuts us off now, we can just be angry about that one thing and not like everything that ever happened in our life. And in the process, it's not that you have to feel it exactly, but in the process, we're getting learnings from, and we're actually going to that emotion. So when, Carly said, like, I just don't do anger, I was like, huh. This is going to be interesting.
That was actually one of the moments that led me to realize that I needed to tell somebody about my traumas, because we were doing a meditation where we were supposed to be tapping into our emotions. And I was like, I just found I like could not tap into anger at all. And that was like months before the level 1 training.
Yeah. And you just couldn't even feel them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when we can't feel them at all, we can actually like get into them by practicing, which is essentially what we did. So Carly and I had a nice little dance in the backyard around a cookie. Do you want to share the story?
How far back do I? Okay, so this was one of the moments where moments before it or the day before it was one of the biggest times that I was aware of the fact that I was dissociating. But again, I didn't know that the label dissociation I didn't understand that part. But you were telling a story. How detailed do I get?
You just share and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, so Megan was telling a story about how this is how I remember it. You were telling a story about how you were doing all the things and you were leaving your job and you were getting your FDN, but there was that like eating disorder down below that you hadn't really dealt with, and it was getting you from where you should be. And like, so thinking that you were at the top of the mountain and then realizing you were really kind of in this pit. And it just resonated because going back to the masking part, I came to this training like, I'm healed, I'm ready to level up, like I've got my shit together. Oh, I'm cursing. Is that okay? Got my stuff together. And at some point in that, because I just wanted you guys to think I was like amazing and perfect. And I don't know why or who I thought I wanted, I don't know. And so that really was like, I just felt so exposed in that moment of they're seeing right through me. They're seeing all the things that I don't want anyone to see. And they know all the things, and I don't know, so much was going through my mind, and then all of a sudden nothing was going through my mind, and I just felt so stuck in my chair. And so at some point I got to the point where very grateful. My previous FDN was one of your assistant coaches, and so she was there as a safety, well, not for me for safety, but because I was so stuck in my chair at that moment, and this is the funny part, is I was avoiding being paired with her. And I was literally stuck in my chair. I don't remember. I remember it as just not being able to move, not being able to really form a thought. And at some point, like everybody was paired up, and it was me and Kylie that were going to be paired up. And I could not do the exercise because I was so triggered. And so I'm so grateful that she was there, because I'm honestly not sure if I would have gotten to the point on my own where I would have chose to say something. And so I did say something to her, and I think it was really just along the lines of like, I'm super triggered. And she's like, well, let's go, there's Megan and Alex. And I was like, oh, no. But I did make the choice to come and tell you. I don't remember how much I told you or what. And then that led to, we got into this conversation of I'm having these behaviors and I'm having these habits, and I'm like, I wasn't yet using the label orthorexia, but I'm highly aware of the fact at that point, I was pretty confident that that's what I had, but I didn't want to use the label. And so in some way, shape or form in that conversation, that was communicated with you. And then there was a few other conversations that led to like, please help me get through my shit. And so the next.
No, you can keep going. That's cool.
Okay. And so I was like standing at the counter at lunch. I think this was the next day at that point. And and I said I wanted to get angry. I wanted to feel anger. And so you're like, can I make you angry? And I was like, yes, yes, please make me angry. And so I was standing at the counter at some point waiting for food. I remember some of the moments I just remember so well because it just seemed, I think it was just so startling to me at the time how much it triggered me. And it was so important that it did trigger me the way that it did, because it was just like, why is that triggering me so much? And I remember standing at the counter and making somebody else, it might have been you, was like, or someone else at the training was standing and eating at the counter. And I made a comment like, oh, you're not supposed to eat while standing up. You're like, according to who? And like, that already got me like, oh, they're thinking I'm weird because I have all these rules about how you're allowed and not allowed to eat. And then you like walked over with your food. And I don't know how intentional, it was just you next to me, but my brain was, I don't know if you purposely came over with the food. I don't know if it was just going to be a lighthearted conversation or if it was to trigger me or what, but I got so triggered just by your presence with like a bowl of food that I have no idea what was even in that bowl. But I was like, I think I literally just walked away.
Oh, yeah, that's so fascinating because that was not on purpose. And that's what we love about the container of these events is that we don't have to do or plan anything. It's just like all the magic will align and the people will sit next to you that are going to help you with your breakthrough.
Yeah. So I just literally walked away to like the furthest person I could find to sit next to. And then all of a sudden I see you and like Kylene in the kitchen, like talking and then like looking. And then before I know it, there's a box of cookies in your hands and you're like, Carly, can you come with me? And I was like, I don't know how I got up and came. And I was like, oh, here it goes. It's happening. And then you're like trying to get me to eat the cookies. You're like, eat the cookie, eat the cookie. Why won't you eat the cookie? I won't eat the cookie.
And it was fascinating because you knew we had basically had an agreement that I could do anything to help you get into your anger. So you knew what I was doing. And I mean, it still got you into your anger, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't want it's because I gave you the agreement to do it that I then was like, I didn't want to let you into my world. So that was like the interesting part, because at that point I was like finding it all really funny, which I'm sure was a protector part at that point. I was like, this is hilarious. This is so funny. Like, I'm like, you threw one of my shoes. And I was like, oh, if you're going to throw my shoes, I'm going to throw the cookies. You're like, how could you throw those cookies? And like everything that you were saying to me that I agreed to allow you to do, I was counteracting with, well, that's not going to happen. That's not true. So like I was still resisting feeling anger, but I did feel a lot of enjoyment, which was fun. And I was definitely triggered.
I love it. So my favorite part of this whole story is the one, how much you were willing to go all in, because you were like, no, really, like, please help me with this. Like, I actually, I want to feel and really just played along in every part. And then my favorite part of this story from my perspective was on the very last day, you then end up, working through anger in one of the processes. And then we moved on to do a bunch of other things throughout the whole week. And you never ate the cookie, right? During that whole event where I was trying to get you to eat the cookie.
No, I kind of understand the metaphor now of like the fact that I was refusing to eat the cookie was like refusing to let you in. And then the fact that I was throwing the cookie as far away from me as possible was like, I'm going to keep you over here.
Yeah, you and your dang cookies get away from me. But then, so on the last day, I see Carly coming in with a whole box, or actually 2 whole boxes, exact same brand. They were like Simple Mills gluten-free cookies or something. And she came up to me. She's like, "All right, we're all eating cookies, yeah?" And I was like, "Wait," I was like, "Are you serious?" And she's like, "Yeah." So we have this amazing group video of us all eating cookies together, Carly eating a cookie. And this was a really big deal for you at this point in your healing journey. to be
Yeah.
eating something that had all these, questionable ingredients.
Yeah. At that point in time, I was eating like sweet potato, tuna, lettuce, and carrots. Like
Right.
literally, like I'm saying it with like laughing, but that
But
was
literally
seriously it.
4 foods. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this, 8 ingredient cookie. And I was in tears. I don't know if you remember, but I was just so moved by not, it's not my goal to get people just to eat cookies, but so moved by what this represented for you, Carly. And then also this was like you proactively bringing this thing in that represented how far you'd come in a week, and that the whole group got to be in on, and it just became a representation and almost I'm going to call it a ceremony, because everyone had been through different shifts during the week.
Yeah.
So I just really, really appreciate that you even thought to do that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not, me throwing the cookie is not going to be how this plays out as like my defining moment of this week. And how can I like bring this back? And it was the cookie represented so much for me at that point, because it was what was I going to be allowing in, and it had nothing to do with the food at that point. It was, and there was still like some resistance. It's so funny because I was like, I'll eat half the cookies. Why couldn't I just eat the whole thing? I was like, I'm going to let you in, but I'm also going to continue to maintain some of this control over this experience.
Isn't it so good though to see our patterns? It's like it represents all of it. It's like, okay, well, that's where I am right now. I'm willing to give half. Cool. Right.
Yeah.
And you and I have eaten cookies on other coaching calls since. So it has become this thread. It's so cool.
And what I'm also really realizing is that my giving half is so much more than giving half. Like in my mind, I'm not doing it all. But when you really get from higher and further back, like you said, like I was eating like 4 foods, to then go from that for like months to eating half of a cookie was a big deal. Like it was about the half that I did choose to eat. That was so significant.
It's what Dr. Alex shared at the event. Your eating half was giving it all. That was everything you had in that moment. That's just where you were.
Yep.
That's so awesome. Carly, thank you so much for being here today. Please
tell my pleasure.
Everybody your Instagram or website or wherever we can find you so they can come check you out more. Carly has the most amazing Instagram posts. She is the master at hypnotic language. So you definitely want to check out and follow her, because it's going to just send you into the best state reading them.
Thank you. I am at Carly in Focus, and on Instagram. Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We have some exciting news. Doors to the next round of our signature Transformation Accelerator program are opening soon. Our 12-week virtual group program teaches you the exact 7-step process that we use to reach any goal, from optimizing your health all the way to reaching a goal in our business or manifesting a dream lake house. And here's an amazing transformation story from one of our participants.
It doesn't matter how you come up with the money. It matters that you choose to spend the money on the thing that is going to pour into your life. And I was like, no way. This is the exact amount of money that I needed to go to level 1. So in the time period that I decided to go to level 1, I opened my gym. I completely transformed how I viewed my own value as far as like wanting kids and all of the things, and decided that I was going to do it all. And I actually decided that I could do this for a living as well. So I was really going to just come to level 1 and transform myself. And then when I walked out, I made back the $8,000 that I paid to go. And then I also paid for the $25,000 worth of equipment that I bought in my gym. And then an additional $11,000 that I just put into my gym again. And it was wild to think that I could own the gym. I could also be a coach, which I never even thought of. I was like, oh no, I just want the transformation for me. Like, I just need this for me. I just want to be a better version of me. And yeah, that's how it all happened.
Thanks for coming to hang out with us on the podcast. It is our goal to lead others through accelerated transformation that takes all parts of ourselves into account. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. At almost 2 million downloads and quickly heading to 3, we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more and more people and help them learn how all 4 bodies, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, work so they feel empowered to be, do, and have whatever they want in life.
If you find this podcast helpful, please take a moment to text 5 friends you think might benefit and leave us a review. It means so much to share this work that has transformed our lives with others. We appreciate your help so much and can't wait to see you next time.